Is child-led learning. Could you turn to someone next to you, preferably someone you don't know if possible, and just ask them what do they think and what do you think that child-led learning is? Pardon? Teacher?
It's a facilitator, and the children do most of the things, like the answers come from them.
Yes.
And even they may also ask questions which we need to answer.
Yep, lovely. Right, anybody like to throw something out? This lady at the front, thank you. She said that the adult is the facilitator, but are you happy to, what do you say is the child's role?
Yeah, children do most of the things like asking questions and answering. They ask each other and they have a discussion where the answers related things come up automatically. Teacher is a facilitator.
Anybody else like to add to that?
What is important to the choices, own choices, leads to the learning.
Okay, the child's choice. Yes.
Some people have teaching who can do with absolutely content and get it in the hands. And if you model that, you see that they, however, they go to that table with a good parent, good argument, and children, and other people do both the skill, but they take that skill further to develop the things that they want.
That might be one way to start it, or you might have been talking about hats, but you don't actually model. You could start off just with the materials, see how they go, and then model from that, sort of building on the skills, depending on what materials they used, or maybe not even having materials, asking them first of all what do they want. So it's sort of stripping right back where you'd be actually the adult teaching something, and then they go and do it. Good morning. So as I just said, children choosing the route in their learning they will take within a play-based environment, building confidence as they learn to explore, solving problems as they relate to others, which is key.
Most important thing is for us as early years educators to know that these kids need the space and the time to explore on their own, because if everything is teacher-led, then they're not independent learners. This is what we want. This is the 21st century school.
Definitely.
In our school, we have the extended academic area. It's like a much bigger area than this class. It's furnished with all kinds of toys and tools. Kids are free. During class time, they're brought in groups by their assistant teachers. They are independent. They can play, they can go play, they can do vlogs, they can do anything they want. Okay? For a certain period of time, of course, it's not like 1 hour a day, but every day they go. Okay? So this is very important. And some of them learn much more than what, parents try to give them with their copy paste or just copy words or copy letters or copy letters and numbers.
So how do we do this? How do we set it up? Because it's not just about putting resources and materials and letting children just go and use them every day for a certain amount of time. It's a lot more complicated than that. Now, although that we've got starting here with observation, looking and listening and noting what the children are doing, so they might be in an area where they have got free choice, and then looking at that with your colleagues and assessing what the children were doing, and from that planning how you will develop the resources that you've got. But I feel quite strongly that we don't necessarily need that start here, because it might not start with an observation. Something might have happened, a child brings something in, it sparked their imagination, they're showing it to other children as they're settling. That's what I think is the joy of early years, is that you have the opportunity to go with that and see where their learning goes. And you might have planned something and have your learning intention, but actually very often the things that you plan will come out of that, and it's the careful work of the adult to then help that child see where that learning is going to go. And that's where it comes into planning. So it's not, as I said, about just putting the resources out. There is careful planning and careful thought behind that. That very often parents, they come in and they see all these activities set up, or even if you've just got things that don't look like they're anything, but it's that developing with the children, and because especially in Dubai we have lots of children have access to lots of ready-made toys, kits, equipment. They have access to a huge amount of things, but it's where I feel things are sort of done to them, whereas they have to use their imagination with more open-ended materials. So I start looking at the learning environment, how that impacts how children will lead their learning. That's okay. Does anybody want to make a comment about that or ask anything about the pictures there? Or we've got some children there, they're making a volcano, and it's come about, it's an idea they had from a storybook you might know called Dinosaurs and All That Rubbish, and they were fascinated by some of the pictures. Not only that they were looking at recycling, so they're using bottles and containers and things to make their volcano, but it links to the story, but they're working together. The adult is there supporting if they ask for something, or even supporting their ideas, maybe taking them back to the book to check, maybe even encouraging them to go and look and research what a volcano looks like, what does a volcano do, developing their language and supporting them if they in their interactions as well. And then from that, the children created things but to celebrate what they've been doing. The children had made a gallery, and again, that wasn't something they thought of, it was with the adult support. Said, well, you've made these fantastic things, we really need to show these to other people, let's make a gallery. So it's the adult encouraging the children, and also positive praise as well, and that really just affirms what they've been doing and makes them feel really proud of their work. Anybody want to make a? Yeah.
Something very important, even from the beginning, I figured it out. It's such a type of learning, these sorts of experience. Like, you can't just ask the students to go and explore without providing them.
No.
So that might be one of the challenges in those schools who cannot provide these.
And I think that's why it was really important to me to bring resources that are not things that you have to buy. So, for example, on the table here, we've got dried rambutan shells, which have a lovely texture to them. The children can use them for printing and things. All the things there are things that the children were asked to bring from home, basically things that would be thrown away. Yeah. And also with that, so they'd already had some pre-learning from that. They'd been talking about rubbish and how we throw things away. We could collect our rubbish and bring it to school. We could go and recycle it. Where can we recycle it? Or we can make things with it and reuse it. And that's not only our rubbish, it's sort of clothes, toys. And so it sparked a discussion of all those sorts of things and about our planet, and it evolves from there. And the children want to know more because they've initiated it, and they want to find out, how can they look after things. And we ended up with a huge amount of resources of what ultimately looks like rubbish, but it's amazing what you can do with tubes and other things. And it's not that difficult to store them either, because things like plastic bottles, just get some big tubs and keep those. And particularly, I think key to this, that this is in the outside area, so it's where children have a lot of space to be able to make something and not be constricted by just a small size. Like their volcano grew from that to, it was quite big. Our key to this is the role of the adult, so where the adult puts themselves, and it may be different in different situations and different ways that you're introducing activities. So I think this lady here said at the beginning it was facilitating or supporting children in their play. So that might be, you might be modelling something, or you might be doing an observation, so you step back and see how the children access a resource, and then help them, support them, talk to them, play alongside them. I mean, modelling and role-playing as an adult, children, they love that and they learn so much from, if you setting up, for example, a role-play area and you want to show children how to use it, the best way to use those things is to be in there with them. And listening to their conversations, you learn so much of what their interests are and what their learning is, or what they've learned previously, to then be able to know what they will need to learn, or what will be good things to. And I think actually, apart from all the resources, the adults are the greatest resource to the children. Again, it is that subtle knowing of when to step in and when to stand back. And I know that some people find it a challenge that they think, I'm not doing anything because I'm just watching. But actually, if you do it really well, so the children aren't really seeing you, you just get an insight into their world, especially their interactions. And so to plan and provide exciting learning opportunities which are open-ended. So again, I've brought some resources here that are open-ended, things that don't have a set idea of, I haven't put with the salt dough, I haven't coloured it, so it hasn't got a predetermined what it will be. I haven't put cutters out, but you could add those. The children will say if they want to make shapes or cut something. The children will say if they need a tool. But then if they don't, then you can say, well, suggest things. What are you going to make? Can we roll it? How do you roll it? How are we going to shape it? Can you just use your hands? So it's developing an idea. And there will always be a child who's had experience that and said, I need a knife, or I'll need something. So introducing the tools that they may use. If it comes from them, then they're going to be learning from that, and then you can then develop on top of that, and then maybe introduce the session again. So I think particularly in early years, we quite often put things away, but actually if you keep them out and extend that, and the same activity comes out again, children will use it again and again in lots of different ways. And children love repetition. They like to then explore, and then they'll build on what they've learned and then explore in a different way. And key to it is allowing them the freedom to explore at their own pace within an environment they feel safe. And I know that we have time limitations, but being able to have a period of time. At King's we're called chill, and that is an extended period of time when the children can free flow from inside to outside. They can choose what they're doing. They're not having to stop for a story time or something else. They know that they have that time. And obviously you do have to stop for lunch things, but again, if you can keep that resource so the children can come back to it, then and also they know then, if you imagine yourself, if anybody here that likes to draw or paint, or if you in the middle of something, you don't necessarily want to put it away, you enjoy doing it, so that it's quite often display children's models and things when they're finished, but if something's half done, then that's okay to leave it and come back to it, because that's how we improve and develop and learn. And then also the role of the adult is to record and reflect on the children's learning, to plan for their next steps. And there's lots of different ways you might want to do that. I'd like you to just take a few minutes just to discuss what you think the role of the adult is here. What are they doing? Well, I think what's so deceptive is the clipboard, but actually that clipboard is the clipboard the children have been using for their model. So she's then, they've already been making their model, and she's actually then talking to them about what they've been doing. So they're reflecting on their learning with her and sharing what they've been learning, so that then she can help them then talk about how they could develop that. So that's their plan of their work on there, and then she's showing an interest in what they've been doing. But I think reflection as the role of the adult is really important as well, and particularly she she might have, in this case, just if outside other children are playing nearby, just stopped everybody and just said, "Oh look," celebrated what the children are doing there, and also. Okay. So this building came about from using the story Hand of Surprise. So they were talking about people in Africa and how their houses were built. And behind here is a large sort of sand area where the children had been constructing there, but then it also set up construction area. You can see some rocks and things in the background, and children were working out different ways that they could build. So they'd been left with the materials, and so this is a build-up over a few occasions, and then they were introduced to, they could draw their plans. I'm always aware that I don't want to interfere with children's learning by saying, "Oh, you could write that down," or "You could draw a picture of it," because I feel then that you can build up that feeling of, oh, no, she's going to ask me to. They don't need to always record, because actually you can photograph what they're doing, but actually it naturally comes out. And also, again, going back to then taking that learning to the next stage, saying, well, how can you make sure, if you wanted to rebuild this tomorrow, how would you do that? If you draw a picture, then so there's a purpose for what they've been doing. So it wouldn't just be a one-off occasion, it would be built up over, a few sessions and even a few weeks. I mean, it's very tempting sometimes to change. You move on to a different theme, but actually if children are really enjoying something and still learning from what they're doing, then why re-resource, re-plan when actually you can just take planning on? I think that again is where early years, we're fortunate that you can follow the children's learning, and that they probably get a lot more from carrying on with that than then bringing something new. How often is the resources changed, or how often are the children? Or we have. So we have at King's we call concept curriculum. So we have a theme that runs all the way through the school. Usually about 6 weeks. They're half termly. We'd have, so for example, from we've just started a new theme now. So they run about 6 weeks, but they work within the sort of holiday. So from now till the next break, there'll be one theme. And then after that break, so there'll be two then in the summer term. So resourcing, which is obviously always something that's really important. We've got our adults as a resource, but then also open-ended materials. And you'll probably notice that a lot of these things are a mixture of man-made, but a lot of natural things, which I think is also really nicely to link to outdoors and outdoor learning. So, for example, here, these are pieces of, it could either be cardboard tubing or bamboo tubing, and the children then, they could order those tubes and then link to sticks. But that's what we'd probably, as you look at that, think they would do, but who knows, they might not. So you send them. Pardon? Which? This one? It's a counting activity. So it's on a tray and it's got the tubes, and then the children can count and add the sticks. But as I said, they might use it and build the sticks, or they might... And the top one is a tunnel linked to a climbing frame with some sand and pebbles and things underneath. Oh, sorry. Yes? It's not actually. It's underneath. It's on the top. Or no, that's a climbing frame behind there. On the top of there is some camouflage netting. Yes, and inside is a tough spot, which is like a builder's tray, which has got lots of different things on which can be used. It's quite important that those, because they're very low to the ground, so the children sort of climb in, play around the outside of it. Using real life materials, so children like nothing better than using things that they recognise in the home, but also, and you'll notice that a lot of these things come from a well-known store where they have all. I don't know whether I should promote it, but I know. And one beginning with I. But things like this, children love. You can thread through these. There's things I've collected. It's a bit more challenging, things like wood and sticks in Dubai, but it's not impossible, especially when it's windy. Sticks come down. But children love using natural materials, and they find all different ways to turn a stick into all sorts of things. So, and small world play, and some of the best small world play is from things they've created. So children here created a castle. This came about because someone brought their tortoise in, and her name was Princess, and they said if she's a princess she'll need a castle. So they went and researched pictures of castles and made their castle, and there's just a picture on the end when then they decided that Princess might need some friends, so they made puppets, and then Princess went home at the end of the day, but a couple of days later she actually came back to visit her castle, which was really nice. So it was lovely for the child who brought the tortoise in, and the other children really became involved in that, were really keen to create something that she might like. I'm not sure how much she would have liked living in there, but now, of course, when we're setting up all these exciting things, we'll need to not only keep evidence of the children and how they're thinking, but we also need to record by planning and knowing that we're covering the curriculum. So planning, obviously that's something that's really important. It needs to be based on the children's needs and interests. So again, observing. We have a theme, and the theme overpins of what we're doing, but that very often will go. So we'll plan for the weeks that we have of a theme, but where that theme goes and the direction it goes very often changes. So I think it's the key thing is to be flexible and actually see the children as leading our planning, really. And I sometimes think of it as being reflective planning. You're almost planning after the children have done an activity. So we very often have what we call a hook into learning. So we start off with something that gives the children an idea and an interest. So just for example, we've come back this week, and our FS1 children, we're linking a lot of our theme to coming up to our Arts Week. And the teachers in FS1 set up the classrooms. They left some paint splodges and some paper and a few paint brushes, things that the children wouldn't normally be there, a bit of mess on the floor, and a note. And it was from an artist who'd been using their classrooms, and they then had to go, but had left them a treasure trail. So not only did they have to follow the numbers around the school to find out the next clue, but they also had to share with their teacher reading where the next clue was. And yesterday, all the time I was walking around the classrooms, they were so excited because they said, an artist has been to our classroom. I wasn't sure they knew what an artist was, but obviously over the course of the next few weeks they'll be learning. But they knew someone had been in their classroom and they needed to find something out. And from that, in their discussion, just looking for the next clue, the teachers will be taking their learning on from there, and they were then collecting bits of paper to link to a picture. Yeah. Yes. Yes, no, I do know what you mean.
nations do that, especially in the UK and is that still in practice and how to make sure we are being budgeting and we're getting that balance right. And that's the thing that we quite need to understand about how if you really know it, even though you might have listened to children or be and not look like.
I think that a lot of it comes down to experience and knowing where children will take. So, for example, dinosaurs. You know that children will want to play with dinosaurs. They'll want to know their names. Some children will know the names of the dinosaurs. They'll want to know about characteristics, what they eat, what dinosaur fought with what dinosaur. So you know where they're. For example, with the artist, yes, we do have, because we want to create something based on Henry Matisse. But we do also know that the picture that we're using is the snail. So as soon as we start talking about snails, children will want to find out about mini beasts. And so you know that things that intrinsically children have an interest in. So if you have something that crawls along your hands with various legs, children are really interested in that. And particularly in Dubai, we don't see many of those. So introducing that sort of strand, because children of say 3 and 4 have a limited knowledge, don't they? But they do have varied knowledge. So I think it's picking on that, and it's making sure one child's interest will actually, when they start talking about, be a lot of children's interests. Because I often question that why you go on one children's and what about another child's interest? But actually, children are very similar in that, and also if you're celebrating someone's interest, because you as the adult, the facilitator, children are little sponges that want to, and they want to please, so they think, oh, the teacher's interested in that. So you are guiding it to a degree, but then when you're introducing the materials, I think it's having the balance between having a goal at the end, but not having a systematic, right, we're going to do this day, this day to get there. I think you'll still get there, but you might take longer to get there, or your path there will be slightly different. I think it's just having the confidence to follow that. We have a combination of the two. So we have our overview and our theme. Yes. And we've tracked where to make sure that we have skills throughout the year, but then that might change. And obviously, you don't just teach a block of skills and then move on to another block of skills. You're constantly going back over previous skills. So although you map out the curriculum as much as you can, there is overlap, and you need to go back at the end of a theme or at the end of the week in the way that you assess and to see what you've covered and where children are going. And key to that is talking to other team members. So this is our picture of our planning with the reflection. So we have the days of the week, and then there will be activities, but then after each session we're about to reflect and record on that, and that might be done at the end of a session. Very often every day the teacher will talk to their LA and talk about what they've seen. That will be through recording evidence to keep, to check against the early years foundation stage. And I think it would be easy for you to say, right, do it like this, but I think that everybody needs to find their way, and I've seen it done in lots of different ways. So, for example, an observation will come from a group of children, and then a reflection will be made of that and where those children need to be taken on, and that will happen. And I think it's not over a week you will see all children and their progress and their interests. It's not a daily thing. You may not have followed everyone's interests and followed and observed everybody in a day, but over a week, over a couple of weeks, then everyone you will have followed. And I have got some examples of where that's been done. So it's enabled in our chill and our enabling environment. So the teacher has had an idea of target children they're going to observe, and then there's also an opportunity to put in where other children came and joined in the activity, what they're hoping the skills that will be taught from that, and then looking how that links to the curriculum and resources, and then actually what happened, and then how did that develop. And this is something that the teacher did sort of at the end of the session. So it's almost like retrospective planning, because you've learned from what the children are doing, and then you build up a picture, and over a week the teacher has everybody on there can see where their learning's going and then can move that on. Yeah.
asking what they were doing. And they said they were making a magic potion. So the next day we extended it by like doing a recipe exercise, which is that recipe product. And then after we went into the it. So we used to come in the stuff that we found out as well. And we are actually myself to really say, we said that whatever way you say, and that's going to be actually
We've also discussed the word unsupervised care and looking at sort of the resources that we've looked at so that it's differentiated between the children as well. So we're not constantly having to evaluate what the children need next, but they're able to choose where they are in their own learning and what they might need next. For example, the standard with water, reading from low level to high level, depending on where the children are in their learning. So it really allows them to take control as well.
I think again that comes back to not only your own reflection, the adult's reflection, but the children as well. So what the children have to say is key to how that's going to move on. And then just a little thought as to what learning's taken place here. So there's just a log with some old chairs. So the legs are broken, so they've been attached to a log. But you imagine children, that imaginative play that can happen there, the interactions between children. And setting something up like that is actually quite cheap to do, but would create hours of entertainment. And I will just give you some ideas of places that you might want to develop yourselves. Think of ways that children learning. What things could you not put in there so that children would initiate more learning, or things that you could just put in and then allow children to add to? I always think very often less is more, so that although that's a lovely construction site, I would like to think that that wasn't set up for them to come in. There would just be a couple of hard hats to start off with, and then you'd talk to the children, you'd look at pictures, you'd do some investigation, you'd read some stories, and because they need to have ownership over their environment. And again, I'm a huge fan of the outdoors and getting children outside and using the outside areas in your schools. And it's not impossible to do. You can collect things as you do go to the journey they've used. I'm not sure where they've got their resources from, but they've got lots of things. Just creating a little area with sensory area with growing plants and things. Children love. We've grown some vegetables because while it's cooler, and particularly to take advantage of the cooler months and being able to go outside. And we've been looking at the environment and what lives there. The children listening to birds, and we do have quite a lot of wildlife when we start actually listening and looking. And just have we need you to fill out an evaluation form, but please just have a few minutes thinking of things, what could you take away from this? I'm sure lots of you have elements of this or are doing lots of things, but there's always another way to look at things and try things. Sometimes it's just nice to go back and try something and see how children respond to it. Thank you.